Uh, Welcome to the Buckeye Battle Cry Radio Network. This is Mike Meals. I'm sitting down with one of our writer editors of the website. Um, so joining me today is the Flying Buckwayan, Brandon Zimmerman. Brandon, why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are, a little bit of your background, that kind of thing.
Hey, my name is Brandon Zimmerman. I'm originally from Wapakoneta, Ohio. Military guy. Served about 7 years active duty in the Air Force. Separated from then and became a government civilian, still working for the Air Force. Altogether, government service, I'm over 16 years now. Um, Currently live in Falcon, Colorado, where we just moved here about 2 months ago. Um, Due to my wonderful wife being active duty still. So we received orders out here, and so we moved out here about 2 months ago from Honolulu, Hawaii.
Okay. And why don't you tell everybody the story of how you got started with the Buckeye Battle Cry?
Well, it all started in October of last year on Twitter. I was notified by Mike Meals about a, a piece that another writer for the Buckeye Battle Cry does, Chris, called Fans Interact, where he just reaches out to fans to talk about the previous week's games and to ask them a few questions. So Chris reached out to me after the recommendation from Mike, and I wrote the piece for him. Shortly afterwards, I was offered a writing position with the Buckeye Battle Cry. So I did that for a few months, and then just recently here, probably within the last 2 months, was offered a editor gig. Be one of four people that are editors for the Buckeye Battle Cry, and so that's where I'm at now.
Okay. And what pieces and stuff do you do for the Buckeye Battle Cry? Where have people seen your work at?
So weekly, the two main pieces that I do are the Around the B1G that comes out on Tuesday, where I just go through each Big Ten team, let you know what they did the week prior and what games they have coming up the following week. Then on Thursdays, I run the What Would Woody Watch, where I just look at three, four, or five of the top games around the country, and kind of give you a preview on those games and what to kind of watch for. Outside of that, it's just do a lot of little smaller pieces throughout the week, depending on what pops up. When the depth chart comes out on Tuesdays of game week, I'll do up a quick article on that. If we have any Buckeyes that win awards throughout the week, I'll do up a quick article on that. And that's where the four of us kind of all work together, the four editors, and we kind of talk with each other and make sure we kind of are covering all the bases so we can get the information out to you guys.
Okay. And where else would the fans of the Buckeye Battle Cry possibly see you at?
Um, Weekly, I'm on with Mark Rogers on Mark Rogers TV. You can catch that on Twitter, on YouTube. He's got a website out there too, where I discuss the Ohio State Buckeyes with him. Mark covers all of college football, so he brings on a bunch of different writers who specialize in teams. So I'm his Buckeye guy. So go on there each week and discuss with him. You get to see my ugly mug on YouTube.
So I know you've actually wrote a really good piece about this, kind of talking about it. But you were one of the 35 or so thousand Buckeyes that made the trip to Norman. Kind of tell us, a little bit about your experience. What's in the article you have coming up? Because I know it's a pretty good one there. Describe the game day experience for us. Not just as the game itself, but like the trip to Norman and everything.
Yeah, the actual game itself, all of you guys saw that. So what I'm kind of focusing on is just kind of the experience leading up to the game and the stuff at the game that you really wouldn't see. Not going into X's and O's about how Curtis Samuel's so much faster than every other man alive. more about the surroundings for it. So, yeah, I mean, it was the Oklahoma fans were amazing is the only word that I can think of. Just how friendly they were, how welcoming. So many people just walking around, saying, "Hey, welcome to Norman," wishing us luck, hoping that we have a good time there. Um, Buckeye Nation also was just as great. I know, every fan base has their small percentage of fans that we're kind of ashamed of because they just go out of their way to talk smack or just be rude or
Mhm.
and I really didn't see any of that from either fan base. Buckeye Nation, as you said, they were saying 35,000 people out there from the time I arrived in Oklahoma City where I stayed. There were just Buckeyes everywhere. Walked into the lobby of the hotel room, and I mean, it's just Buckeyes everywhere. The hotel chef had made homemade Buckeyes and had them sitting out for all the people as they were down in the lobby. Went out to dinner that night in an area called Bricktown there in Oklahoma City, and just Buckeye fans were filled the streets. Every restaurant, every bar, they had like little boats going down the river, kind of reminded me of San Antonio, where there were just Buckeyes full everywhere. I mean, it was just amazing to see the turnout for Ohio State and um, how our fan base was so eager to get out to Norman, which I thought was really cool. I mean, it's always fun to see new places, new colleges, new stadiums, uh, learn about their traditions, go see Heisman Corner, all that stuff. So that was really cool to see that much. So Saturday morning rolls around, and we all had already seen on Twitter how every uh, every Buckeye fan had came to Norman, and all the Oklahoma fans were not big fans of it. So Saturday, I knew what to expect. Buckeye fans were everywhere, RVing, tailgating. We arrived. We got there about 11 a.m. And the RV lot was just full of Buckeyes. I mean, some of the most amazing RVs you've ever seen. There was double deckers. Like it was just crazy what was going on out there. There were Oklahoma fans all with their RVs too, and it was all just kind of intermingled. We all talked, we all hung out. You walk to the bathroom, you're with a bunch of Oklahoma fans, and you're just kind of talking about how excited you are about the game. Um, at no point was there any like fights or anything that I saw. I didn't see any super drunk people, which is kind of surprising to me, since there was the delay. So it was a night game, plus they delayed it 2 hours. So by the time the game got started, like we had been out there tailgating for 10 hours. There were people out there even longer than that.
Mhm.
So was kind of expecting the walk up to the stadium to be a little more crazy than it was, just with drunk people being drunk. But there really wasn't too much of that. I mean, it was. I don't know if the storm kind of took the wind out of everyone or what. Like we kind of all had to shelter in place because when that storm rolled in, I mean, there were tents flying everywhere. There was trash flying everywhere. As we were walking, as my cousin and I were walking to my car to kind of get some shelter before we went into the stadium while the storm was coming through. Like we actually had to put on sunglasses because there was so much just dirt and trash flying around. Yeah, so it got pretty crazy. So maybe that kind of calmed some people down and
Mhm.
brought people back to life, thinking there might be a tornado coming. Sobered them up pretty quick. But I mean, it was pretty pretty calm. We get into the stadium as the game finally is beginning to start, and I mean, I'll tell you right now, that stadium was the loudest that I've ever heard a stadium. I've been bowl games, I've been Michigan games. That stadium was rocking there in the first quarter, especially as Oklahoma was driving down that first drive. It was crazy loud, and then the Buckeyes went three and out. Stadium was just crazy loud, and thank God for Cam Johnston being the superhero that he is, flipping the field like that because a bad punt, and giving Oklahoma the ball like on the 40 or 50 probably could have gotten bad and gotten that crowd even more into it.
Hmm.
Instead, he flipped the field. Oklahoma gave the ball back to us, and we scored pretty quick after that. And after that, you guys know how it went from there. So the stadium slowly started to get a lot more quiet. And halftime, it was, people started to leave. Then after that first touchdown or the first drive in the third quarter, like most of those Oklahoma fans kind of took off after that.
Okay. Yeah, I know the. I mean, you could see it on TV at home. The stadium was rocking. You could definitely see that, and I mean, we had the was it one or two? I know there was one. Was there two false start penalties on the offensive line that first drive? And
Yeah, I think there was two there.
yeah, so I mean, yeah, you could get a sense of it, but it's always a whole different story when it's in person. So okay, very cool.
Yeah, and then, like a school like that too. I mean, that's why I say, like if you're a fan of college football, not just a fan of the Buckeyes, like go to games like that. Do everything that you can to get to a game like that. Because to see all their pregame type stuff was just, cool. I mean, that's not stuff that they show on Fox. Fox is too busy showing all their commercials and stuff to show any type of, what's going on in the stadium. So, to see all their different traditions that they have pregame was pretty cool to see. I mean, even as a Buckeye fan, I thought it was pretty cool.
Okay, so looking at the Big Ten schedule, the Big Ten conference as a whole, there's as I've mentioned more than a few times, there's an upper echelon, obviously, of a few, three or four or so teams in the Big Ten that are really the cream of the crop. There's kind of a middle stage of the majority of the rest of them, and then you have, your cellar dwellers, but kind of tell us, talk about your outlook on the Big Ten this year. Who you predict to win the East and the West. Who you have winning the conference. What you're expecting out of the Big Ten.
Well, I think there are three very good teams in the Big Ten. Obviously, you got Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State, which I think are kind of head and shoulders above everyone else. Also within that, I feel like Ohio State is another level higher than Michigan and Michigan State. But I think all three of those teams are, very top quality teams. They're easily the best ones in the Big Ten. And that next tier, you've got your Nebraskas, your Iowas, your Wisconsins that I think kind of fall in that group. They're all very solid teams. I think they're all, top 20 to, top 40 type teams. And then you got the bottom part of the Big Ten, which, drops off quite a bit. So I think the Big Ten's very kind of top heavy. I mean, I think, the first 7 or 8 teams in the Big Ten could compete with, most teams around the country outside of someone like Bama or something. The bottom portion of it, would have trouble competing with, the Mountain West. But as far as champions, I think Ohio State will win the East. I think they've still got a tough schedule coming up, so I don't think that's a given. I think they are easily the best team, but I don't know if necessarily they will go through unscathed. They finish up with Michigan State and Michigan, which will be, a nice round robin into the playoffs or into the Big Ten championship. On the West side, you've got, I think Nebraska is the team that I would go with. They are, even last year, they were a lot better team than they kind of showed. They lost, I think, like 6 games or something. But if you look at all those games, it was all by like 1, 2, 3 points. It reminds me of that year after Tatgate with the Buckeyes when they lost 7 games when Fickle was the coach, but it was like 7 games by a combined 18 points or something. Then they go on to the next year and go undefeated under Urban Meyer for the first year. Nebraska's not quite that good, but I don't think they're anywhere near as bad as they showed that they were, or the record showed that they were last year. I could easily see, I talked about it in one of the preseason pieces with Nebraska, I could easily see them winning anywhere from 7 to 11 games. Like
Mm,
it's a pretty wide gap. But like the more kind of watching this year, I think they will win the West. I think as long as they can keep Tommy Armstrong not turning the ball over. He's always been a good talent. A dynamic playmaker, but that dude would just always turn the ball over, whether it was a
mm.
fumble or a pick or something. This year, he's not doing that. So if they can keep that going, I think Nebraska's going to be a pretty tough team. So I think it'll be Ohio State and Nebraska in the Big Ten championship, and then I think Ohio State would be Nebraska and head on to the playoffs.
Okay. I know the game there was it like November 5th ish when Nebraska comes back to the Horseshoe for the first time in a couple of years.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's going to be a really good game, and I think I think you're right. I think it's going to be a preview of the Big Ten championship game. So
Yeah, yeah, it'll be fun to watch.
looking at college football as a whole, I think it's pretty safe to say that the Big Ten champ, unless the bottom falls out and it's somehow a four-loss team or something, they're going to be in the playoff. Um, so, and I think we kind of are in agreement on that a little bit. But if you had to pick, if you were the final pick for the college football playoff this year, who are your teams?
Well, if I was picking for teams right now based off the first 3 weeks of the season, I think you obviously have Alabama and you have Ohio State. I think you would throw Louisville in there. And then for that fourth team, um, you just based off the season so far, you would have to go with either Houston or Michigan, I think, in that
Okay.
spot. Um, and I think, I'd probably lean more towards Houston, just because that win against Oklahoma. I know they have 2 losses now, but I mean, come on, they've lost to two like top five teams. So
Yeah.
it kind of bugs me that now, like people were talking about, like Oklahoma shouldn't be ranked, because they have 2 losses. Like it's the top 25, so it's really the 25 best teams. Like
Mm,
they lost to two top five teams. It doesn't mean they're not a top 25 team. Like
yeah.
they're a solid top 15 team. I think the Sooners are. So I think Houston's win against them is just better against than anything Michigan's done. I don't necessarily think Michigan would lose to Houston if they faced each other, but just based off right now, I think Houston would get that 4 spot. As we get into the end of the season and thinking about how the college football playoff committee likes to think, I think you'll have Alabama. I think they'll win the SEC and they'll be in. Ohio State will win the Big Ten and they'll be in. Those final 2 spots are going to be a little bit rough because, as we've all kind of talked about and what you kind of wrote about earlier today, was the Big 12 is pretty much screwed now.
Mm,
Their only hope really was with Oklahoma or Texas coming into Week 3. If Oklahoma lost to the Buckeyes, it was pretty much all on Texas. So Oklahoma loses to the Buckeyes. That gives them 2 losses. So, the Big 12's already thought of as one of the weaker ones. And now they're 2 out of conference, losses against
mm,
2 top tier teams. I think pretty much all but eliminates them. I mean, they could roll through the Big 12 undefeated, and I don't think they're going to make it unless you've got multiple teams with, 2, 3, 4 losses there towards the top. Um, so I don't think anyone from Big 12 will get in because I still think Oklahoma is going to win the Big 12, so they won't be in. Pac-12 is going to send someone. The College Football Playoff Committee just loves their conference champions too much.
mm.
And, a lot of people think it's going to be Stanford. I actually watch a lot of Pac-12 football, as you know. Go Sparky. Um,
By the way, that's the Cougars.
Sparky. The I think actually Washington's got a really good team, and I thought that coming into the year. We had a few preseason type polls going around the Buckeye Battle Cry that never made it to public eyes for reasons that we wish not to discuss. But I was one of the few people that had Washington ranked up there pretty high. Washington's returning some good people. They've got a great coach. I think Washington's going to win the Pac-12, and they will make the playoffs. I really don't think they're a top four best team in the country, but the way the college football playoff committee works, I think Pac-12 champion will make it, and it'll be Washington. That fourth team, I will once again slide in. I'm going to slide in Houston there. I think Houston's win against Oklahoma was huge, and then I think they will beat Louisville here in a few weeks. I think they actually match up defensively well enough to stop Lamar Jackson. They got a real aggressive and athletic front seven that I think they might be able to contain them. So I think they will beat them. That'll give them two good wins, two, top quality wins. And then the rest of their schedule, they'll just be able to kind of slide through. I think they got their crap game out of their schedule last week against Cincinnati, where the team just kind of didn't come out and play to their full potential until the very end. So I think Tom Herman will have them ready. So, I think it'll be Alabama, Ohio State, Washington, and Houston.
So I know you've been a lifelong Buckeye fan, and you've been through a lot of, ups and downs. What's your favorite Ohio State moment as a fan?
My favorite moment would have had to be the 2011 Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. Just that whole experience, kind of. I know the game never happened, but kind of defeating those demons that the Buckeyes have been carrying around for a while by not being able to beat the Southeastern Conference. So after Ryan Mallett threw that pick to Solomon Thomas, the crowd was just so into that win. It sounds kind of stupid, but just all those Buckeye fans chanting SEC, SEC, was just kind of awesome. It was kind of getting this big pressure off of everyone's chest at the same time. The way that where we sat was kind of where the Buckeyes came into the tunnel, and just to see how excited they were. To see how excited Terrell Pryor was, came over and was shaking everyone's hands. That was just a good moment. The following weeks and months after that weren't so good, but, just that moment in time at the Sugar Bowl was, just a good moment to be a part of. It wasn't a championship. It wasn't anything special. It was just, getting that monkey off of our backs.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that your first taste of national television fame?
Yes. Yep. National anthem. Got me.
So looking back over your, lifetime of memories of the Buckeyes, who is your favorite Buckeye of all time? And, to further that question, who's your favorite Buckeye on the team this year?
Well, the favorite Buckeye of all time, I know I've kind of already talked in the previous days about this, but, it's probably because it's so recent. But right now, my honest answer would have to be Zeke. I just loved everything about Zeke, the way he played, whether he had the ball in his hands or he didn't, that dude was going full out, he was, being the best blocker he could be. He was being the best catcher he could be, the best runner. It just seemed like, he was one of the few people that you could see every play. He was literally given everything that he had. And, I just really appreciate that. So, it might be just because he just left and I'm still riding the high of winning that championship a few years ago. But as a fan, I think right now Zeke would be my all-time. you've also got guys that you got to throw in there. I mean, like Orlando Pace was a great, Mike Doss, Laurinaitis, Katzenmoyer. Man, I loved Andy Katzenmoyer back in the day. So there's just so many great ones, but right now it's Zeke that stands out to me just because of his all-around play.
Okay. And what about on the 2016 team?
The 2016 team, my favorite player, I would have to go with Sam Hubbard. I'm just a big fan of his ability. Hasn't really shown it yet, but just I I think by the time this year is done, he's going to be a pretty dominant force. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with the defensive line because I talked about it on Mark's show yesterday. I've also been very impressed with Jalen Holmes. And seeing Jalen Holmes live, just his speed was just crazy. I think with Jalen Holmes, I think with Sam Hubbard, um, it's going to be crazy on the defensive line.
Okay. You ready for the fun? All right, so now it's time for the completely meaningless, off the wall lightning round.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get
So,
some
dogs or cats?
cats.
Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
Anything other than Dr. Pepper is an incorrect answer, by the way. Um,
Is it Coke everything in Texas?
no,
Like you guys take Coke for everything?
down here everything's Dr. Pepper
That's just everything is Dr. Pepper. Okay.
or sweet tea. Um, College or professional football?
College
Football or baseball?
football,
Pancakes, waffles, or French toast?
pancakes.
How do you take your hash browns at Waffle House?
I cannot remember the last time I've been to Waffle House. So
Favorite coach, Brady Hoke or Rich Rod?
Rich Rod.
Man, that's just going against everything. He's at
Well,
Arizona now.
I know that's why I like Rich Rod because as a Buckeye, I got to see my favorite team beat the crap out of them. And now, as the Sun Devil in me, I get to watch the Sun Devils beat the crap out of them every year. So,
I,
Rich Rod.
I guess that's
Every day.
acceptable. Okay. So the last thing here before we finish up, what is one not too incriminating, crazy, not necessarily tied to athletics story that you would tell people about yourself so they know you a little better?
Well, we've got a lot of stories to tell. Um, so I don't know if we mentioned it earlier, but Mike and I grew up together, so we have known each other for quite a long time. A lot of crazy stuff. Um, I would say the story that I'll tell is the one that I told at his wedding, where Mike, big old boy, got knocked out by my 1-year-old son. Um, he was, being a good Uncle Mike and hold my son. My son wanted to reach up and touch the light, that had one of the globes on it. So Mike held him up, lifted him up. My son touched that globe. That globe was not on very well. We were at our friend's house and that globe fell off, nailed Mike right in the head, knocked him out, dropped to the ground. But like a true football player, didn't fumble. He still had the kid up. So like he's laying there and he's just holding my son up. So we all run over to make sure that my son was okay, and then we kind of grabbed my son and just left Mikey lay there. So that's what good friends do.
Yeah, you guys are so kind. I appreciate that.
No problem. And he turned out okay. I mean,
Okay, so I want to take a minute here. Thank you for sitting down with us and letting everybody in the Buckeye battle cry get to know you a little better. For providing your insight on college football in general. But real quick, why don't you remind everybody where they can, find your work, find you on Twitter, that kind of stuff.
Well, you can check out my amazing Twitter game at bzimmerman9, where I discuss college football once or twice a week. Uh, that's really about it. I am not good at Twitter. I'll be the first to admit that. I am kind of on a Twitter hot streak, though. I've gone from like 30 followers to 113 in about 2 weeks time frame. So, like I'm trending up, guys. Like if you're not following me yet, like jump on the wagon now. Um, and when I do tweet, it's great things. If you followed me, you would have saw Austin Kendall talking smack about the Buckeye basic defense on Thursday instead of Friday when all the big time writers started tweeting out my video, with some of them not giving credit. Um, but like when I do tweet, I make it good things. So I'm not going to waste your time. So check me out, bzimmerman9 on Twitter. Also, check out Mark Rogers TV, where he discusses college football. You'll see me on there weekly. This week, I'm actually going to have a few different videos going. Sat down with Mark on Monday for, like 2 hours talking about all kinds of different things with the Buckeyes, that he's going to split up into different segments that he's going to post out throughout the week. So yesterday, there's a video out there about me talking about the Ohio State and Oklahoma game. Today, you put a video out there talking about the defensive backs. You'll hear me talk about Curtis Samuel. You'll hear me talking about wide receivers. So, a bunch of things coming up there. So make sure you're watching Mark Rogers TV. Also, he just covers a bunch of college football. So check that out.
Okay. All right. So I think that's about everything we had here. Want to take a minute again to thank Brandon for sitting down with me tonight. Like he said, check him out on Twitter. Check him out on Mark Rogers' show. Make sure you follow him so that he can get more followers than Ben, because that's the ongoing joke that we need to get his boost up. And, that's all we had. So thanks a lot, Brandon.
All right, thanks.